Hello, I'm Yvonne Sears, founding owner of Elevate Resilience. This presentation is actually a copy of what I put together for this year's AdelaideSec, and it went down so well I thought I'd share it a bit more broadly with everyone. So in putting together an idea for AdelaideSec this year, I couldn't actually go beyond the issues around third-party risk management. And having spoken to clients and vendors, we're seeing a common problem come through. So let's get on to the next one. Everyone understands the issues around third-party risk management. We understand it needs to be done, and we're seeing more and more events come through that have actually been caused by third-party or supply chain. So I put into GPT this morning and put a request in for the most recent 3 or 4 events that have been caused by third-party risks, and it came up with 3 events over the last matter of weeks. This is an ongoing issue, but what are we doing wrong? I've spoken to both sides of the coin. So I've spoken to clients who heavily depend on third parties, knowing that they need to do third-party risk assessments and supply chain risk assessments. I've also spoken to vendors and suppliers of goods and services who are receipt of these requests for information. And it seems like everybody's just getting overwhelmed by the copious amounts of information needed. It seems to be clients who have some understanding that they need to do something, and for some reason, the whole checklist of 350 security controls has come to mind, and that's what we've run with. But are we over processing? Are we just collecting questionnaires for the sake of it? Because we know we need to do something, but is that the right approach? We've got the poor vendors on the other side of the fence who are receipt of these same but different questionnaires, spending a huge amount of time and resources in putting together their answers to questions that aren't always relative to the situation, purely because a lot of the clients at the front end are not really understanding the types of questions that they should be asking specific to their use case. I wanted to highlight that there are actually some risks associated with the current process. So the risk being, are we actually identifying the risks associated with third parties if we're sending out blanket catch-all questionnaires, regardless of what the situation, regardless who the third party is and what product or services that they provide? We're not getting much intelligence about what the third party risk actually is. There's also the dependency on receiving the information, that the person receiving it can actually evaluate the responses and understand what comes back from the vendor in terms of the control effectiveness and also the relevance to their situation. And we have a capacity and capability limitation here at the client side. So there's an over-reliance on what's being self-reported by the vendors. So without much in way of assurance or validation of those controls beyond what's already within a trust center, for example. A lot of the assessments are point in time, so the risk landscape can actually change significantly over time, over a matter of months or years. So if you're just doing a one-time assessment and it's a checkbox exercise, yes, we've completed a third-party risk assessment on this vendor, check, move on to the next. That's not really having that holistic view and ongoing management of the third-party risk. And the process that we're currently running is very much a checkbox mentality that we need to get out of. So it's not good enough in my personal view, and also the fact that we are actually continuing to see these cybersecurity data breaches come through third parties, that we're not doing enough around moving beyond the checkbox mentality. So in identifying the issues associated with the current approach to third-party risk management, are we actually achieving our core objectives that we're set out to achieve anyway? So with the amounts of information coming through, do we feel that we have a good grasp and understanding of our third-party risks? I personally believe that we need to change our mindset to third-party risk assessments and take it way back to the beginning. What is it that we need to do and why? We need to take a step back from the current processes that we're doing and really think about what it is that we want to achieve. So we know that we need to do third-party risk assessments, and that's essentially the top end goal. But how do we get there? We need to break down third-party risks to their elements. So there's an accountability element around, what internal controls are in place for the organization to prevent third-party risks happening in the first place. The second element is around the third-party provider themselves, the products and the services that they provide, and the risks associated with that, and then the controls that they are accountable for. And central to that are the shared controls. So, there's only so far that the third party can ensure and validate security controls are in place. But the client then has some accountability as well to ensure that those controls are being fully implemented. We know that completing questionnaires doesn't equal security. So what is it that we're looking to achieve? Here I set out some objectives and key results, OKRs, and helping us to come up with something a bit more tangible to give us the assurances. So, for example, if your board asks you tomorrow to prove that your third-party risk management process is working, what evidence would you show them? What does success actually look like for your organization? And how would you measure it? Let's start out by setting some objectives. So here we either want to prove or disprove a statement or set a goal. In defining the objectives around third-party risk management, we've really got to look into the four key areas. So that's the third-party risk management process itself, the internal controls, shared controls, and third-party controls. So essentially, this is just an example of the type of objective we can set from the outset, as this very much looks at the holistic process around third-party risks. So we want to demonstrate that we've got comprehensive third-party visibility and governance in place. So this is the statement that we either want to approve or disprove within our organization. The next objective that I'm sharing here is around the internal controls. So here, for example, we want to strengthen our access management and authentication mechanisms. So this is something that we internally can control within our own environment. This is what we have a say over. Next, we're looking at the shared controls element. So in making this statement of we understand the risks associated with how we use the products and services, it gives us a real broad view of, okay, well, these are our internal controls that we're accountable for. These are the third-party obligations, but there are some shared controls based on how we utilize their products and services that we're also accountable for. And we need to identify what those controls are. The final one, so you don't want to set more than 4 objectives really for a defined period, so that may be for the next year, for example, is to specify the control requirements within contract terms. So this is a blanket statement essentially on how you're going to be managing your third parties within contracts. Then the following sections will help us to pull each of these objectives apart and how they're going to be measured for success. So we've got the objectives, we're moving on to key results. So looking at our objective for the overall program itself, so we're making a statement that we have comprehensive third-party visibility and governance in place. So how are we going to prove that that is a statement that we can put our hand on? So a key result could be, for example, that we have completed a percentage of third-party relationships, but a specific group. So we're looking at completing 100% of our critical third-party relationships by a defined date. So this gives us a measurable objective that we can actually work towards and demonstrate. Another example could be that we've implemented automated vendor discovery. So we've put out a scanner on the network to identify all of the relationships that we have that maybe we didn't know about to begin with, to ensure that we have a complete third-party register in place and have identified what those relationships are, and that we've identified any unauthorized third-party connections that we can also manage. And all of this together helps us to prove or disprove that we've got complete visibility and governance over our third parties. We can apply the same principles to all of the other key results. So how are we going to measure the statement or the goal? So here, as the example was given, so looking at our internal controls, we want to strengthen access management and authentication mechanisms. Now, this would be specifically around the access controls relating to third parties, for example. It helps to define what that goal is. So here I give a few examples of what the KRs could be to prove or disprove that statement. So provide a goal. So here we've got a goal that we're going to implement single sign-on for 95% of critical SaaS solutions within 90 days. So that again gives us a defined measurable objective that we can work towards. Another key result would be to reduce any orphaned accounts by 90% through lifecycle management processes. Again, we can set a date on that. It could be 90 days, could be 4 weeks, depending on what your environment is. And another key result could be that we've enforced multi-factor authentication for 100% of the privileged user access accounts across all of our SaaS platforms. And again, that depends on scope and scale of your organization as to how feasible that is, but set an achievable and smart metric. The next objective is around the shared control requirements. So stating that we understand the risks associated with how we use products and services really indicates, our understanding of the environment, what it is that we've requested from these third parties, what level of access that they have, and how we're managing it. So the key result would be, from this point forward, all new products and procurements would be subject to a business impact assessment, a privacy impact assessment, and or an artificial intelligence impact assessment, which is really important to clearly define the internal shared controls and third-party control requirements. Now, in completing these assessments, we can ensure that the boundaries between the client and the third party are very clear. So we get a full understanding of the levels of access that the third party may have to the client's information or assets, and what the associated risks are with that. So, for example, if a third party is processing information on behalf of the client, then that's going to be a different risk rating and have different control requirements as opposed to hosted software as a service, for example. So from here, we're making a statement through this key result that 100 of new products and services are then subject to a level of risk assessment at the organization level. And that's an easy metric that you can put into place. So a line in the sand this point forward, we're going to do privacy impact assessments, BIAs, or system impact assessments, or that sort of thing. The final objective here that we want to prove or disprove is that we have specified security control requirements within contract terms. Now, that is very specific around the obligations of the third party to that relationship. So the first key result we have here is that our expectation is that 100% of our new contracts specifically outline our expectations for security. Now, this means that we've done the first part of that role, which implies that we've selected appropriate controls from risk assessment and have defined our expectations within the contract term. So that links to the previous key result, which is around the shared controls in completing privacy impact assessments, for example. And so we've done the assessment around what that looks like, what that is for new products and services, and we've translated that into the requirements have then been included within the contract terms. The second key result is more mature in that we're holding third parties account for the ongoing verification and validation of the control implementation. So this ensures that this isn't just a once-off activity and reduces the, point in time limitations that we addressed early on in the presentation. Now, before we finish off on the OKRs, consider who else you can collaborate with and involve in designing and refining your OKRs for your organization. So it's really important to point out that third-party risk management shouldn't just fall on the information security or cybersecurity team, because there are very different roles and responsibilities throughout the organization, from the legal team, finance and procurement, as well as the business owners themselves, and actually refining what the third-party relationships are and what they look like and what obligations that they have. So really go out and find out who these individuals are within your organization and what their obligations are, considering their role for your organization, and how you can work together to create some informative OKRs that really set clear goals and measurable objectives. So, who has oversight and accountability of third parties within your organization? So who can you lean on to identify who the third parties are, for example? So it may be that you ask finance for a list of contracts or procurement for a list of approved upcoming projects and things like that. So, see if you can achieve your first objective by having visibility of who those third parties are in the first place, and create your third party risk register from there. And that's essentially where we begin. So good luck, and let me know how you get on with your OKRs. If you're interested in learning how to bring this all together, I will be doing another presentation on how you can present these OKRs, and then I'll also be delving into the tool that I've pulled together to manage the collection and ongoing management of third-party risks. So thank you very much.